we've been given instructions to keep the little. Okay. That's very specific.
All right, go ahead, Sonya.
So
go ahead, get started.
We're ready to go?
Yeah.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here today through live stream. Over the past few months, we've been looking at the future and how to diversify our economy while building on our vast energy sector. We announced a new royalty framework for helium, recently signed on to an agreement with other provinces for the future development of small modular nuclear reactors, and just a couple of weeks ago, we announced our Expert Mineral Advisory Council to help us build a mines and minerals strategy and to help us develop our very vast but untapped potential for rare and valuable minerals here in Alberta. Tomorrow, we'll be looking at another area of huge potential for Alberta's energy future, so please stay tuned for that announcement. But today, we're here to talk about our vision and strategy for the future of natural gas and its potential to help us diversify our economy and get Albertans back to work. Here today, we are located in ATCO's Heavy Equipment Repair Depot in Edmonton, where they've done some very interesting work to start blending hydrogen into natural gas for consumers. I'd like to thank ATCO for agreeing to host us here today and for being a great partner for Alberta's energy future. Premier Kenney will begin our announcement today and speak to the overall vision for the future of natural gas. Then we'll have Associate Minister Nally speak to some of the very specific actions and goals that we have set for the emerging fields connected to natural gas. We're also happy to have Nancy Southern, Chief Executive Officer of ATCO Group, here today, and she'll speak to some of the achievements that ATCO has already reached in regards to hydrogen, as well as where they see the future of hydrogen in Alberta. Finally, Sarah Marshall, the Director of Sustainability for Nova Chemicals, is also here to speak to the future of petrochemicals in the province. We're also joined today by Greg Moffat, the Senior Director of Business and Economics with the Chemical Industry Association of Canada, whose organization also provided valuable input into the vision we're putting forward today. And finally, for the media calling in today, we will be available for questions after Sarah has concluded her remarks. To keep things moving, I will invite the Premier up to take the podium, and we'll then move directly to each of the speakers in turn. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sonya, to you for kicking us off, as well as to Minister Nally. Special thanks, though, to ATCO and ATCO President Nancy Southern for welcoming us here. Of course, ATCO is a great Alberta success story, started in a Quonset hut here in Alberta and is now spread to create employment and opportunity across the country and around the world. I also want to thank Nancy for serving on Alberta's Economic Recovery Council, providing her wisdom and experience as we've developed Alberta's Economic Recovery Plan, a bold and ambitious plan to build, to diversify, and to create tens of thousands of new jobs, to bring job-creating investment back to Alberta when we desperately need it during these challenging times. You know that, of course, in Alberta, the energy sector has been and will continue to be central to our economy. The largest sector of the Canadian economy, the largest export industry of for Canada, a industry responsible for 500,000 jobs directly and another 300,000 indirectly, the single largest source of revenues for governments, Nancy. If it weren't for industries like this, we wouldn't be able to pay for the health care and social programs that we depend on. So that is why, I know I always get these questions, why are we relentlessly championing the energy sector? Because it is our single greatest source of employment, of opportunity, of wealth, of taxes, and while there are challenges, it also has a very bright future. That's what we're here to discuss today, because the developing world is hungry for our energy. And if we don't get that energy, including our natural gas, to global markets, guess what? Vladimir Putin's Russia and the OPEC dictatorships will. I know, unfortunately, there are some in Canada who would like to see that day come. But here is, I think, when we talk about natural gas, this is where we should be able to find a common sense coalition between people whose primary focus is in the environment and people whose primary focus is economic growth, because as the cleanest hydrocarbon-based fuel, natural gas, as a larger source of world energy, can massively reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. And that is why Alberta today is launching our new natural gas strategy. But first, let me talk about why we chose to do so at this ATCO facility. This is giving us a sneak peek of some of ATCO's exciting work and really the next generation of technology that will ensure a vital future for Alberta's natural gas industry. This ATCO pilot project will blend clean-burning, emission-free hydrogen into its existing natural gas distribution system to reduce the carbon footprint of natural gas consumers in Fort Saskatchewan. This site is just like the one that ATCO will be building in Fort Sask next year for the pilot, which will feed the blend of hydrogen and natural gas into the pipelines of consumers instead of just natural gas. And this will bring hydrogen into homes and businesses as a clean source of low-emitting energy. As an energy source, hydrogen produces zero emissions and has greater potential to power not just appliances, but also heavy-duty transportation, heating, and electricity generation. So natural gas infrastructure will play a key role in this ATCO pilot. But natural gas is also critical to the production of hydrogen. Alberta has the potential to produce some of the least expensive and lowest emitting hydrogen in the world, thanks to a combination of continued innovation and our expansive reserves of natural gas. You know, we have the 4th largest global reserves of natural gas. By leveraging previous investments in things like carbon capture, utilization, and storage, Alberta natural gas refiners can produce what's called blue hydrogen, where natural gas is converted into hydrogen and the resulting clean emissions carbon emissions are stored or used for other purposes, like, for example, enhanced oil recovery. It's a uniquely Albertan approach, taking what we have in abundance and adapting it to meet the world's needs using cutting-edge technology. This is the path to diversification, taking our strengths, namely our great natural resources, adding our amazing culture of innovation, investments in technology, and world-class workforce, and applying that technology to lead the world in environmentally responsible energy. The potential for hydrogen in particular is huge. The Hydrogen Council, which has looked into the future of the fuel, predicts that it could be a $2.5 trillion industry by 2050. I repeat, $2.5 trillion annual industry by 2050. So putting Alberta on the global hydrogen map now, as this energy source is beginning to gain prominence and promise, will be crucial for us to be at the forefront of future changes in energy. Now, this is just one example of the strategies that we are articulating in today's natural gas vision and strategy for Alberta that we are releasing after the last year of consultations and hard work. In this strategy, we have big plans for liquefied natural gas to reach markets around the world. We are aiming for having the top system in the western half of the North American continent for plastics recycling and reuse to help meet goals of reducing plastic waste to zero, and an expansion of our own petrochemical manufacturing capacity in the province, a huge expansion of that, so that we can produce much needed items like, for example, personal protective equipment that we've become familiar with in the last 7 months. We'll expand Alberta's natural gas sector, moving from the extraction and industrial use that currently make up most of our activity, And let me just give you a bit more background on this. 2 years ago, the great Alberta business leader Hal Quisley led a panel that had been appointed by the previous government, and I commend them for the initiative to produce the 2018 Roadmap to Recovery, to revive Alberta's natural gas industry, because we have seen, unfortunately, because of collapse in prices in recent years, huge challenges in our natural gas industry. Natural gas used to, for example, back in 2005, generated over $10 billion of revenue for the province. This year, it'll be more like $300 million. And that's a reflection of what has happened to the price. And really what Hal and his panel pointed out was the need for us to, first of all, get more of our natural gas to global markets through LNG exports, to streamline regulation here. So, for example, we can accelerate the conversion of coal to natural gas for cogeneration like ATCO and other companies are doing. So we could speed up approvals of those pipelines, for example. He called for us to put a special focus on natural gas in Alberta's government, because in the past, I think, Sonya, I'm sure you'll admit this or recognize this, in the past, the oil industry and the oil sands in particular dominated the policy attention of Alberta's government when it came to the energy sector, and often the natural gas sector felt like sort of the orphan child. And so that is why in our platform we committed to appoint an associate minister for natural gas, supported by a designated associate deputy minister for natural gas. And I want to thank and commend Minister Nally and his team for having done tremendous work over the past 18 challenging months. And really the marching orders I gave, Dale, were to implement Hal Quisley's report, one recommendation for which was to come up with the natural gas vision and strategy being released today. Dale, a lot of people don't know this, but about 15 months ago, in the summer of last year, we were selling Alberta natural gas, often in negative prices. And on a good day, we were getting 30 cents for Alberta natural gas. There was a glut in the market because we don't have enough pipeline capacity, and that was creating a real price crisis, which was jeopardizing the future of many great Alberta companies. And so Dale went to work, and all through the summer of last year, met with hundreds of stakeholders in the up, mid, and downstream aspects of the gas industry, and came to a consensus that some thought was impossible to achieve, the temporary service protocol, which basically was a form of voluntary curtailment to avoid price collapses during periods of maintenance and low demand. As a result of that protocol that Minister Nally led, we saw the price of Alberta gas go from something like 30 cents to $1.40, and now in recent weeks it's been even higher. I want to thank Minister Nally and his team for having to help to save many Alberta gas companies and hundreds, potentially thousands, of good blue-collar jobs in those companies by having that exercise that leadership. Our government also provided retroactive property tax relief to dry, shallow gas producers who have been under extreme financial stress in the past couple of years, so far delivering, I think, about $60 million in property tax relief. We, of course, have released the new petrochemical incentive program, and I've spent an enormous amount of my time as Premier working with global petrochemical companies to attract potentially tens of billions of dollars of investment to create thousands of good-paying long-term jobs here to make Alberta a global hub of petrochemical investment. But so much more needs to be done, and this report here today outlines a number of the new strategies which we're going to put on hyperdrive now. Of course, carrying on with the work to attract more petrochemical manufacturing. I've talked about the hydrogen vision, particularly with blue hydrogen. The pressing forward for first of all, to complete the LNG Canada project on the West Coast, and the Coastal GasLink pipeline that leads to it, but also to press the federal government to work with us to create more LNG export opportunities. I've said this to Prime Minister Trudeau, and I will continue to say it. There is no greater thing that Canada could do to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions than to get our LNG to countries like China and India. Every unit of additional LNG that we get to those markets is a coal-fired power plant that they're able to convert to natural gas, improving air quality, reducing NOx, SOx, and particulate, reducing CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions. This is Canada's big play when it comes to the climate challenge, and we must move forward on it energetically. I've talked about the plastics circular economy, a key part of today's vision, as well as increasing industrial demand. I'll just conclude with this. We really need the Government of Canada to play ball with us in creating jobs, in bringing in investment, and improving the environment, the trifecta of a natural gas strategy. You know, I'll give you an example. We've streamlined the red tape for Alberta to approve small pipelines that lead from gas fields into power plants, so they can convert from coal to natural gas as their main source of fuel. So we've done that. I was at TransAlta, the plant they have west of Edmonton, earlier this year. They got that approval from Alberta in less than a year. The project is done. But some of the longer pipelines to bring gas into power plants are under the federal regulatory authority, and they are taking 3 years or longer. Our message to the Government of Canada is, if you're really focused on reducing emissions, help us to help you in something that won't cost you a cent, but will simply all we're asking for you to do is to move at the speed of business by cutting unnecessary red tape and hurdles for things like domestic pipelines that bring natural gas into power plants. Just to give you one example, we need certainty around the completion of the Coastal GasLink. Another example, TC Energy has had to suspend this year's construction on the expansion of the NGTL, the Nova Gas transmission line, which is the backbone of the natural gas system in Alberta, because they couldn't get approval on time from the federal regulator. During an economic crisis, Ottawa, help us help you create wealth, create jobs, create revenues during an economic and fiscal crisis with a clean fuel. Another example, we are so bullish about the opportunity of creating thousands of petrochem jobs here, but the federal clean fuel standards and potential plastics bans are causing many of those companies to wonder whether they're actually able to operate competitively here in Alberta and in Canada. Again, to the Government of Canada, if you scare away investment in petrochems, guess what? Those companies will still produce, they will still invest, but instead of investing in Canada, they'll be investing in places like Louisiana and Texas and the developing world at lower environmental standards. That's not good for anyone. So those are just some examples of how we need the Government of Canada to work with us on achieving the vision of economic growth, job creation, and environmental responsibility through our enormous natural gas reserves. Thanks very much, and now we'll hand it over to Minister Nally.
You hid my notes. Thank you, Premier, and thank you for the kind words. I'm going to share something with you, and the Premier is hearing it now for the first time. But when he first called me and the Premier asked me to be the Associate Minister for Natural Gas, it felt like the Associate Minister of the Titanic. That was the state of the natural gas industry at the time. But that was 18 months ago. And today is a special day because we are launching the natural gas vision and strategy, and with all the successes that we have had to date, there is a renewed optimism in the air that wasn't there 18 months ago. And so I'm very pleased to be able to release that strategy and that vision with you today. So thank you, Premier, for your kind words. Minister Savage, thank you for emceeing this event. Nancy Southern, please thank you for the hospitality as you host us here today. We appreciate that. I'd also like to thank all the groups that played a critical role in building this vision and strategy so that it reflects the full potential of Alberta's natural gas sector. Your input and feedback on the plan have helped shape it, and it will be in the hands of industry to make big parts of the vision a reality. I'd also like to thank everyone for their patience, as I know this document has been in development for quite a while. We would have loved to release it earlier, but unfortunately the pandemic had other plans. As Premier Kenney has just said, we have big plans for our natural gas sector, which we believe will help position Alberta as a post-pandemic powerhouse for responsible energy production. To be sure, the uses and benefits of natural gas have not diminished. In the decades to come, we will still rely on natural gas to heat our homes and serve as a reliable energy source for electricity and industrial uses. But natural gas also has huge potential for other uses, potential that has yet to be tapped. Given the vast amount of resources we sit on, almost 300 years worth of natural gas based on current usage, it's important that we fully explore the possibilities that natural gas provides to Alberta's people and our economy. There are 5 broad areas where we believe the future of natural gas brightest for Alberta. Specifically, hydrogen, petrochemical, liquefied natural gas, plastics recycling, and industrial demand. Each of these sectors provides a new or expanded set of opportunities for industry, for consumers around the world, and most importantly for Albertans. One global market that's been getting a lot of attention lately is hydrogen. This is one that we've had our eye on for some time, and the momentum is definitely building, which is why we wanted to highlight a potential future for hydrogen here today. Whether it's used for transportation, heating, or other uses, the potential for hydrogen as a portable, zero-emission energy source is outstanding. And Alberta is an amazing and unique position to meet the growing interest in hydrogen. As Premier Kenney mentioned, our earlier investments in carbon capture, utilization, and storage, along with the abundant supply of natural gas, have positioned us for a head start in producing the clean, responsibly sourced hydrogen that the world is going to need. Some of the figures predicted for the future of hydrogen, such as the one Premier Kenney highlighted, are truly astounding. $2.5 trillion by 2050. And we'll be working closely with industry and interested parties to develop a roadmap for how we can best leverage all our advantages to become a significant player in that large potential market. One market where we're already a major player is petrochemical, and we are in a very strong position to grow that sector even further. Alberta has a goal to be a top 10 supplier of petrochemical, taking advantage of our potential to become a world-class hub for petrochemical manufacturing, capable of competing with other hubs such as Louisiana and Texas. In order to reach that level of competition, the Alberta government will need to take a significant leadership role. That's why I announced back in July that we are aiming to draw more investment into petrochemical manufacturing through the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program. Make no mistake, Alberta will become a world-class destination for petrochemical facilities. This new program, which I will have more to say about in the near future, provides grants to companies once they have built and are operating new or expanded petrochemical facilities in Alberta. Facilities that produce products we need every day like plastics, medical supplies, fertilizer, and computer parts. In the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen the need for many of these products, especially personal protective equipment to keep our frontline health workers safe. With our huge reserves, an established industry that can supply new products with important components, and our expertise in producing low-emission, low-cost petrochemical, this is one sector that we're confident will help diversify the uses of our natural gas within the province. Beyond Alberta, though, the demand for natural gas around the world is expected to grow as much as 36% over 2018 levels. And liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is the way Alberta will participate in that large market growth. Already one of the largest single investments in Canada history, the Canada LNG facility in Kitimat, is under construction. Canada is best situated to access world markets. With LNG projects on the east and west coast and are under consideration, we are better equipped than our competitors to the south. In addition to providing new markets for natural gas, it also presents a solid win for reducing global carbon emissions. As other countries, especially in Asia, also look to switch from coal to cleaner fuels, LNG can displace thousands of megatons of carbon out of the atmosphere. It also provides significant opportunity to reduce energy poverty. We live in a world where over 800 million people go to bed hungry at night. And you know, it's no coincidence that those same 800 people are the same ones that don't have access to clean, affordable energy like natural gas. Estimates indicate that over 2 billion people will join the middle class globally over the next decade, and Canada's natural gas can help support that growth. We'll be working closely with our federal counterparts, as well as partners in British Columbia, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and other provinces to ensure we can get our product to markets in the next several years as the global LNG market really begins to take off. Another market just getting underway that is highlighted in our strategy is plastics, and specifically to finally extract their full value through the creation of a circular economy. Put simply, that means enhanced recycling practices using the latest technology to allow our petrochemical industry to fully utilize plastics through multiple life cycles in ways that cut down on plastic waste. Every chance I get, I like to make clear that plastic themselves are not a problem. Waste is the problem. Our government will be working with municipalities, industry, and recycling associations to drive all parties, including consumers and producers, to build up the economies of scale necessary to enable a true circular life cycle for plastics. While plastic waste is a big environmental problem, this solution is also good business. Single-use plastics and wasted plastics that could have been recycled are a $7.8 billion wasted opportunity. Harnessing that waste and driving it back to plastic producers to be reused and resold benefits recycled workers, it benefits petrochemical workers, and it benefits the environment all at the same time. Industrial demand, meanwhile, already accounts for a majority of natural gas use in Alberta. And it's important to keep your biggest customers well supplied and happy. Alberta's oil sands are one of our biggest customers, and they'll continue to use more and more natural gas for in situ bitumen production as the world's demand for reliable energy increases. As Alberta's electricity generation shifts away from coal, it is also an excellent opportunity for natural gas to step in and provide the consistent power generation that's key to a number of industries in our province. We'll be working closely with the federal government to reduce any barriers to this shift in energy resources and ensure that we have a strong natural gas infrastructure to support businesses in rural and remote communities, including First Nations and other Indigenous communities. As the Premier said, our vision across these existing and new industries is to become the global preferred source for clean, secure, and responsibly produced natural gas and related products. We have an amazing opportunity to expand our place in the global energy industry, all while diversifying our economy and helping tackle some of our most pressing environmental concerns, such as plastic waste. It's an opportunity we're looking forward to meeting. So thank you again for your time today, and I'd like to invite Nancy Southern up to the podium to speak about ATCO's perspective on the future of hydrogen and natural gas.
Thank you, Minister Nally, Premier, Minister Savage, Sarah Marshall, and to my incredible ATCO team. I'm so proud to be amongst you and working with you. Sean, Tom, thanks for that great demonstration. Greg Caldwell, Brian Bricks, Kenny and your team, you are sterling. And of course, our leadership team, George Lidgett, Bob Miles, and Jason Sharp, and Dale Friesen, thank you so much. I'm so proud to be here amongst you. So on behalf of the people of ATCO, it is my singular honor to join you for such an exciting announcement for our natural gas industry, for our province, and for our country. So much of what we have the privilege to enjoy across this great nation is due in no small part to Alberta sharing the enviable bounties of our natural resources. From the labors of our drillers, roughnecks, tool pushers, geologists, well service providers, pipeliners, refiners, and processors, their tireless work provides the reliable, affordable energy we depend on each and every day. By any measure, the contributions of our energy sector outstrip those of any other industry in this country. Contributions which are far too often taken for granted. Alberta has contributed more to Canada's prosperity than any other province. However, this province, and indeed the nation, requires time to stabilize, to digest the overall impacts of COVID, demand destruction, commodity price declines, and recent structural policy changes. But make no mistake, Alberta is willing to do much more. And with today's announcement, we will begin. By further diversifying our natural gas industry, we can create new markets for our resources and provide jobs, investments, tax revenue, and royalties that will keep our economy strong. And perhaps no opportunity holds greater promise than Alberta's burgeoning hydrogen economy. For decades, hydrogen has been widely touted as the fuel of the future, and for some, it's an energy panacea. For others, it's just a pipe dream. No pun intended, my pipeliners. But there is no doubt that hydrogen, as a complementary byproduct of natural gas, has a powerful role to play in the world's future. And as you've heard from the ministers and the Premier, Alberta can be a global leader. With our pioneering spirit, plentiful resources, infrastructure, expertise, we can produce low-carbon hydrogen at a lower cost in Alberta than almost any other jurisdiction in the world. And our vision is to enable Western Canada's world-class natural gas industry to grow abundantly in tandem with Alberta's hydrogen economy, including the supply of exports to global markets where demand is steadily growing. In recent years, both Japan and South Korea have unveiled national hydrogen strategies, underpinned by the desire to secure a stable supply of hydrogen from trusted trading partners. In fact, South Korea recently signed a letter of intent with Australia, home to ATCO's green hydrogen production facilities, to develop a hydrogen import and export partnership with exports leaving Western Australia by 2024. And closer to home, here in Alberta, hydrogen can play a powerful role in decarbonizing heat, including blending it with our natural gas grid at gate stations like this one behind us, across this province and across the country. This will be vital to achieve our long-term emissions goals, especially in light of Ottawa's pursuit of more draconian policies, such as the proposed Clean Fuel Standard. This Clean Fuel Standard stands to add billions of dollars of costs to the Canadian economy, putting far more stress on every industry and every household, even as we are still reeling from the current economic crisis we face. Canada is north of the 49th parallel, and every millimeter of our country's landmass, 10 million square kilometers, has experienced sub-zero weather. And we need our oil and our natural gas for warmth, transportation, and to keep our vast country going, not just surviving, but actually thriving. We are eminently fortunate in Canada to have been blessed with such abundant resources. It is a boon that any country in the world would give its eye teeth for. And absent reasoned policy, we risk destroying the very industry that heats our homes and businesses and fuels our national prosperity. And at a time where the strength of our industries is already precarious, where every dollar saved and job retained matters so much. In no uncertain terms, today's announcement is an important step for Alberta, one that stands to benefit all Canadians, both directly and indirectly for generations to come. I want to commend Premier Kenney, Minister Savage, and Associate Minister Nally for their vision and their leadership in positioning Alberta at the forefront of new opportunities, and for the courageous, bold steps they are taking on behalf of Albertans and our foundational resource industries, and indeed on behalf of all Canadians. Hundreds of thousands of Albertan families and millions of families in Canada and around the world are relying on a strong Alberta, which in turn makes Canada strong, a strong global participant. And I am so proud of the people of ATCO who are standing here with me today and around this province and around the world, as you stand proud and determined to do our part and to help make Alberta be all that she can be. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Sarah Marshall.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for having us, our ATCO hosts, most importantly, Premier Kenney, Minister Savage, Associate Minister McNally. Nova Chemicals is a leader in the responsible production of plastic resins that help shape a world where plastics vital to our lives are even better tomorrow than they are today. We are dedicated to being a leader in innovation that enables our customers to deliver products that make everyday life healthier and safer. From the packaging that keeps our food fresh, to the bubble wrap that protects our online purchases, to the kayaks and swing sets that makes weekends fun, and the medical equipment that keeps us safe and healthy. Plastics touch every part of our lives. For more than 60 years, with our roots firmly in Alberta, Nova Chemicals has been a leader in the innovation and advancement of plastic products and technologies. In 1985, we were a founding member of Responsible Care, the chemical industry's commitment to health, safety, security, and the environment. But being a leader means more than this. Businesses like ours can be a positive catalyst for change. Plastic is and will continue to be an important material, yet the impacts of plastic in the environment are real and immediate. As a global citizen, Nova Chemicals is playing a role in shaping a positive future by helping build a plastic circular economy, where plastics are more easily collected, recycled, and recovered, and by working to prevent plastics from entering the environment. We're deeply committed to addressing the issue of plastic in the environment while maintaining the value that plastics brings to society. It's not just a requirement. It's how we demonstrate care in our operations and maintain our right to operate. So we are very pleased to support the Government of Alberta's new natural gas strategy, which recognizes not only the important and growing role that petrochemicals and plastics play in today's society, and also that plastic is not a material to be wasted after use, allowed to be landfilled, or worse, left to accumulate in the environment, but it is a valuable feedstock for our future. Today, Nova is working in a research and development partnership with Enerchem, an innovative Canadian company with operations right here in Edmonton, to close the loop on a plastic circular economy by converting municipal solid waste into ethylene for use as a feedstock to make polyethylene again, plastic. We're also working with Merlin Plastics, Canada's largest recycler, with operations in Alberta and British Columbia, to produce high-quality recycled plastic from curbside recycling. We applaud the government's plan to create scale in Alberta's recycling collection system and proactive policy and funding to accelerate recycling technologies. Alberta is a province rich in resources, and by recognizing the value in the connection of natural gas to petrochemicals to plastics recycling, we will work together to bend from a linear to a circular economy and grow Alberta's opportunity for the future. Thank you.
Okay, before we begin the media Q&A, I'd like to ask the journalists on the line to please let us know who you're directing your question to, as we have a lot of participants today. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Yes, thank you. The first question is from Rick Bell at the Calgary Sun. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Question for Premier Kenney. Premier, what do you think of the Alberta Federation of Labor's boycott of businesses who support your party and not the NDP? And the fact that the NDP will not denounce this tactic when they have the opportunity to do so today, what does this say about them?
First of all, businesses are not allowed to and do not support political parties in Alberta. There's been a ban on corporate and union donations directly to political parties for the past 3 years. Secondly, the Alberta Federation of Labor is part of the NDP. They are legally affiliated as part of the same organization. The head of the AFL, who's launched this campaign to boycott Alberta job creators, is on the board of the NDP. I think this is deeply disturbing, that in the middle of a huge recession, we have the NDP and its special interest friends attacking Alberta job creators at their most challenging time in a century. Job creators that are struggling to keep the doors open and to keep paying people to put food on the table. Job creators without whom there would be no government revenues to fund the social programs that we all depend on. You know, we live in a democracy, and businesses, unions, and others have every right to express their views about the best policies for our society. Unsurprisingly, most businesses and most business groups support free enterprise policies focused on creation of opportunity, employment, and wealth generation. They have every right publicly to support policies like that, just as NDP-affiliated unions do. But you don't hear anybody on the free enterprise side of our democracy seeking to boycott groups or individuals that they disagree with. Where does this end? I mean, I understand the NDP boycott is targeting a particular organization called forget exactly the name. It's a political action committee for promoting articles supporting the idea of an Alberta-run pension plan, because they maintain that it would allow us to provide better pension benefits at lower taxes, increasing pension security and opportunity for Albertans. Now, you might disagree with that, but it's a perfectly reasonable position. To say that supporting that position should put you in the crosshairs of a smear campaign, a bully campaign, using intimidation tactics to try to hurt those businesses is, I think, un-Albertan. I can't say I'm surprised. Gil McGowan, the NDP, top NDP leader and president of the Alberta Federation of Labor, said recently that parents who send their children to faith-based schools are, quotes, nut bars. You know, that kind of bigotry and this kind of intimidation has no place in our Alberta. And I would just ask Ms. Notley to call off the NDP anger machine, respect differences of opinion in this democracy, stop the bully tactics.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Chris Varco, Calgary Herald. Please go ahead.
Hi, I have two separate questions. One is for Nancy Southern and one is for the Premier. Mr. Southern, I wondered if you could talk to me a little bit about what are the challenges or obstacles for ATCO to grow the hydrogen business here in Canada right now. Can it be profitable for you? That's my first question. The separate question is for the Premier. Premier, there are a lot of broad initiatives laid out here, but I'm wondering what will these measures cost your government specifically, and what are the specific direct investments that are going to be required for you to grow the gas business?
Thank you, Chris. It's Nancy here. The challenges that we face in terms of scaling up hydrogen production and delivery and use will be associated with finding ways to use the best optimal use of our existing infrastructure and creating even larger scale production of hydrogen. I think the big challenge for us is we do have to crack the carbon capture nut on a commercial level. We're very, very close, talking with various technologies and users of carbon capture around the world, in particular in Australia, where we've had a very good insight into the largest carbon capture at a facility on the west coast of Australia, where they're producing natural gas. I think that'll cost us the most initially. That'll be our biggest challenge from an economic perspective. But once we have cracked that nut and we have plenty of geology available to us here in Alberta to be able to store the carbon and then be able to reuse the carbon, and we have to create that full benefits loop that was talked about in plastics, a circular economy, I think we were off to the races. But I think we're probably 5-6 years away from major full-scale commercial production. And hopefully we don't have any policy issues coming out of Ottawa that are going to get in the way of development of the natural gas fuel stream so that we can process the natural gas in order to develop the hydrogen. I think that'll be critical as well. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. In terms of cost, first of all, we estimate that the new petrochemical incentive program to be something like in the range of $1 billion program. But that is a offset on future taxes only once projects are commissioned, are working, are producing employment, and are actually making profits. So in that way, it's a zero risk program for taxpayers. It's not like some of the old loan guarantees where if things go wrong like they have on the Northwest Upgrader, we're on the hook. This is basically it's a tax incentive once the company is operating and becoming profitable. So those would be quite a way down the stream. You know, it takes once these big petrochemical projects get to a final investment decision, you're talking 3 to 5 years for construction before they're commissioned. So it is there is what would you call a revenue or tax expenditure in the midterm. We estimate that based on the scale of the program, probably in the range of $1 billion. I would say some of the other things we are doing, like facilitating carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which can also be linked to the natural gas stream. That's all being funded by the Technology Innovation and Emissions Reduction Levy coming from industry. So it doesn't come from the general tax base. And in that case, I think the entire Shell Scotford CCS project over the period of a decade cost under the public contribution was less than $2 billion coming out of the ESCR Major Emitters Levy and now the TIER Levy. But most of what we're talking about actually doesn't cost taxpayers a dime. Most of what we're talking about is cutting red tape, facilitating approvals, creating the best policy, the best possible policy environment. That's what this whole project around hydrogen is about. We're creating for an industry that has not existed in the past, a policy framework, a regulatory framework that facilitates the development of hydrogen. We're doing the same thing on our mineral strategy in many other areas. A lot of this is just government getting out of the way, speeding up approvals, creating investor certainty, as Nancy just said with respect to federal policy. Before I go to the next question, there was something else I wanted to mention in response to Rick Bell's question. I was thinking about this. You know, there are dozens of business organizations that support pro-growth policies. Are they all now going to be targeted by the NDP for boycotting? Restaurants Canada, they disagreed with the 50% increase in the minimum wage in the middle of a recession. Are they now going to be, are all those little mom and pop restaurants now going to be boycotted? Are they going to face bully tactics? The Canadian Federation of Independent Business, they support less red tape, lower taxes, lower costs on struggling small businesses. Are they in the crosshairs for a boycott campaign being led by the NDP and its interest groups? The chambers of commerce that represent thousands of businesses across our province, they publicly support, they're basically a version of a political action committee. They put their funds together as members to advocate for pro-growth policies. Are they now in the crosshairs? Where does this end? So once again, to Rachel Notley, stop the bully tactics, because right now businesses in this province need an expression of confidence. They don't need to be attacked.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Yes, thank you. The next caller is James Keller, Globe and Mail.
This is a question for the Premier about pandemic. Yesterday, Dr. Hinshaw raised the possibility of imposing further restrictions in Edmonton, given the spike in cases there. What do you think about the prospect of bringing in additional measures or reimposing restrictions that had been lifted? Are you open to it? If you get such a recommendation, and if it came to that, would the government come forward with any additional supports for affected businesses or workers?
Well, I look forward to meeting with Dr. Hinshaw. She and I we meet at least once a week together with Minister Shandro and other senior officials from Alberta Health to review the state of the pandemic in Alberta and our policy response. As we've said before, we want to do everything we can to avoid moving backwards in terms of public health restrictions. Alberta's done very well relative to other jurisdictions around the Western world with but taking a less stringent approach to public health restrictions, and yet for most of the last 7 months we had a lower per capita level of infections, hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and COVID-related fatalities amongst the large Canadian provinces, amongst all of the U.S. states and European countries. Even with some of the least restrictive public health measures, our focus has been on encouraging people to exercise personal responsibility and to be considerate of others and to protect the vulnerable. As we're now 7 months into this, we've learned a lot more about the disease. And one thing we've seen in Alberta and across the world is that the disease is posing less of a risk to human life than it did at the beginning. You can see that the ratio of active cases or new cases and COVID fatalities has gone down quite significantly right across the world. And we see that also reflected in our hospitalizations and ICU admissions. In the past week or so, we've been averaging about 65 cases of COVID patients in acute care beds, and about 16 of those in the ICU beds, which I'll remind you is a small fraction of our best case projected scenario from our modeling that we released back in April. As Dr. Hinshaw and our government have always said, there will be ups and downs in terms of the total number of new daily infections and active cases. We also need to recognize that for every public health restriction, there are negative unintended consequences, and we, as our Chief Medical Officer of Health has said many times, must balance off efforts to limit the spread of the virus with the broader social and economic health, as well as non-COVID related health challenges, mental health challenges, the addictions challenges. You've seen this year we've lost more people to opioid overdoses, significantly more than we have to the novel coronavirus. So these are the things that we must balance off. We'll await any additional advice or information from the Chief Medical Officer and continue to make what we think are the best decisions, balancing off all of the different health considerations.
Okay, we have time for 3 more. Operator, could you please put through the next caller?
Next question is from Dan Grummett, CTV News.
This question is for the Premier, just continuing on the COVID spread, particularly in Edmonton. Dr. Hinshaw said, Alberta is seeing an alarming trend where 1 in 10 people who currently have COVID went to work or social events when they had symptoms and or were waiting their test results. So if you're maybe going to bring in more public health restrictions, like BC did with the bars, would you have to look more at gathering sizes as opposed to business restrictions, just given the way COVID appears to be spreading in Alberta right now?
Dr. Hinshaw nailed it at the very beginning of the pandemic in Alberta when she said that we are not going to enforce our way out of this. There is already a provincial health order that people who are exhibiting cold or flu-like symptoms should stay home, and obviously that people who have tested positive for COVID must self-isolate. If some people are disregarding those rules, then creating or redoubling the rule is not going to help prevent spread. What we need is for those people to take those guidelines very seriously, and I think that's what our Dr. Hinshaw has been trying to convey. That if people, the single most important thing that people can do is, if they're feeling sick, to stay at home, to self-isolate, to get tested, and obviously, if they test positive, to isolate until through 14 days and until their symptoms have cleared up. So that's the single most important thing that people can do, especially as we come up to the holiday weekend, the Thanksgiving long weekend. If, as she said, if people are not feeling well, they shouldn't even mix with family if they've got cold or flu-like symptoms. So, at the end of the day, people have got to exercise personal responsibility and common sense. Albertans have done very well in that regard over the past 7 months. I think people obviously are getting tired of the whole thing. Gosh knows we all are. But that we can't let down our guard. The single most important thing, if you're not feeling well, please self-isolate until your symptoms resolve and or you test positive. You've respected the quarantine requirement.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Janet French, CBC.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. Question for the Premier. Just to follow up on Dan's question. Hypothetically, some of the reasons that people might be staying home is because they can't afford to stay home if they don't have paid sick leave. So I'm just wondering how much your government has, or how negotiations are going with the feds when it comes to either increasing or supplying more paid sick leave for people in order to allow them to make that choice to stay home and not spread the virus.
Sure. So the federal funding for paid sick leave was announced and made available I think several weeks ago. So there's already been that is available, as are other forms of income support for individuals. And so again, the federal government has taken on responsibility for that. They've delivered that funding. It is available.
One more. Operator, can you please put through the last caller?
Yes, thank you. The final question is from Lisa Johnson, Edmonton Journal.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm wondering if Associate Minister Nally can speak to the petroleum grant program that he introduced in July. We didn't have a whole lot of details then, and I'm wondering if you know now what the grant caps are or overall cost estimate for the government. Do you have any more information on that? And perhaps the Premier could comment on plastics recycling. Since you can't control the cost of low cost of new plastics, how exactly will you incentivize recycling in Alberta?
Okay. So in terms of the petrochemical incentive program that we announced in July, we just came out with the broad framework of that program because we wanted to build it in conjunction with industry. So we consulted with industry specialists, we consulted with petrochem facilities to find out what were they looking for and in terms of what that secret sauce is. So we are just putting that together now, and we're going to be releasing those technical details in the coming weeks. So you're going to see that very shortly. And I'm sorry, what was your second question?
The second question was about plastics recycling. How are you going to incentivize recycling in Alberta?
Well, I mean, not everything has to be incentivized, and so at this point we're not putting an incentive program in for plastics. Industry is telling us that the business model is there to create a life cycle economy. It's good for petrochemical. It's good for the plastic recyclers, and it's great for jobs. And so we'll listen to what industry has to say before we make those decisions.
Okay, that concludes today's Q&A. Thanks, everyone.